David, you started a little Twitter war or
Well, Jason said
tweet
that
storm.
I chose anger based on my tweet, and it kind of
You chose violence.
opinionated about that.
So let's start with this tweet. David, please read your tweet. What did you say?
All right, let me open up my tweet here. I tweeted, #tax_Twitter, : you know that portal you are sending clients to answer quote unquote just 59 questions so you can do the return? It sure feels a lot like the same experience when I just used TurboTax to do my taxes myself. And I said, what are you doing to differentiate? So I have a firm that's going to do my taxes and then my business return, but I've gotten two of these onboarding interviews now. And boy, they feel a lot like TurboTax as far as the questions. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, if I have to do all this gathering, get these W-2s, scan them to PDFs, upload them to somewhere else, I might as well just do them in TurboTax. And it's not about the value accountants are bringing. I'm just like, my experience as the client, I'm like, this is crazy. Like the experience is identical between a firm and just using a self product.
So why I love this is it's one of those things where the tax professional hears it and they're going to get so upset. It's absolutely the sort of question our clients ask. And we've had our clients bring that up several times. Why are you making me do all of this stuff when that's what I'm paying you to do? So several different angles there. The most obvious one is how you're going to differentiate. Don't go into business doing what TurboTax does. Just don't do tax returns that could be done on TurboTax. And I don't think most tax professionals are. Now, the trouble is all those questions that TurboTax asks you, we have to ask you all those same questions and more.
Because you need the data, right? Like
because we need the data, yeah. And there's definitely bad ways to do that.
That reminds me like the bad version is you send me the printed out organizer that has every single possible question. And it's like hundreds of things for me to fill out. Like that's a terrible experience. And you just put a course up on my app, Earmark, Web Forms for Accountants. And this was one of the learning takeaways for me was don't send people a 50 question form or a 100 question form. If you're going to do type form, break it into smaller chunks.
I think we all know that the standard technological bar for the tax preparer isn't particularly high, right? So yes, there's a lot of bad versions of this out there.
So a lot of this is scale, right? And I'm just looking at my own time. And that's what's convenient of something like TurboTax, because all my answers, like, what are my kids' names? What are their social security numbers? Like, I don't know this. I got to go find it. So the fact that it's just already in TurboTax, maybe that's where this makes the most sense. Like, hey, you're going to have to do this onboarding questionnaire, but we're going to reuse the answers, or we're going to have the data, and you just have to clarify a couple of things. That's basically kind of what TurboTax does every year. You're just like, do you still have the same children? Yes. Check. I don't have to worry about the socials. I'm assuming it's correct still. It didn't change.
Yeah.
So it's like, obviously you need the information, but that's the big question is the client experience doesn't feel different.
The forms are not connected to the database right now. That's the problem, right? That would be the ideal situation, right? Jason's like, you have a database of all this client information.
Oh yeah.
And then you confirm with them what you already know. And then you ask them for stuff you don't know. But that's hard. That's a hard problem to solve.
It's super hard. So I've got a video that's half written on this right now. That's the title is something like, "Why is my tax accountant so old-timey?" And honestly, the reason is there's basically 4 tax softwares that the whole U.S. tax system runs on in terms of what CPAs use. None of those systems give you access to any of that data. There are 0 integrations. Intuit's got a little bit as long as you're inside the Intuit ecosystem. But for example, I don't have an automated way to pull your pro forma tax data into a type form. It's all captive data. Those of us that are trying to push that forward, you're having to rely on like RPA, like PDF extraction of these 100-page organizers to pull out the bits of data that you want. So that's definitely making the problem worse. The reason you start going away from TurboTax is when your tax situation goes beyond what's reported on a government form. So whether you're simple or not, you need an efficient way to capture those government forms no matter what. It's all the stuff beyond that. It's the questions and the conversations you need to have beyond just what the IRS knows about to make the most of your tax reporting.
And that's why I had to go with a firm, is because I needed some advising this year. So I wasn't trying to attack the world, but
It says the timing is a little poor with that.
Well, I thought it was perfect time. I was experiencing it was literally on my screen. And
actually, the timing is good. And I think that the customer experience is where we differentiate as accountants these days, right? That's the difference.
Yeah.
And so if our customer experience is the same as a automated tax platform, that's a problem.
Yeah. So the best implementation of this is when you have a tax advisor you're working with throughout the year and doing all of the planning. Filing a tax return is actually more of an administrative process. It's not this ta-da, something coming to a head, because my clients in November, December, they already know what their tax is going to be in April. They've already paid it all in. And so the only thing that's due April 15th is your tax payments, not even the tax return. So at that point, filing your forms is really an administrative process.
I've always thought that, the ideal situation from a customer experience standpoint is actually the old way we used to do things, which was I, business owner, freelancer, whatever, your client, come into your office and I have all of my tax stuff that I've collected in a shoebox throughout the year. And we sit down together and we just go through it all together. Maybe it takes a few hours. You do the return, we talk as we do it. And by the time I leave, I'm done. That's actually the ideal experience. So how do we recreate something like that where we're having a conversation and it's not just me plugging stuff into an impersonal form? How do we recreate that as accountants?
Yeah. So what I try to steer my client towards is I try to avoid the intake meeting. I say, send me your shoebox, give it to me in whatever format works best. I'm not going to penalize you. That's fine. When I want to talk to you is if they're a once a year client, I want to talk to you on delivery. If they're a year round client, the time I least want to talk to you is when we're filing the return, because all that stuff is in stone. There's nothing you can do with it anymore, right? So I want to talk to you outside of that period. Always trying to get it back to it being an administrative process because you planned ahead and you already know where you're headed. But yes, leaving space for making it personal. I think everyone's so staffing constrained and workflow focused that they're trying to squeeze more and more of that stuff out. And so you've got this kind of degrading client experience. It's getting worse over time, just from a position of kind of scarcity. And the only solution is really you got to help fewer clients and help the ones that are willing to pay for the fact that that's more time consuming for you.
And you've been out there talking about how accountants need to raise their prices. And I'm glad you're out there saying that. And you did a really good Twitter thread on the math behind it where, what is it? You raise your prices 20%. That's not a 20% increase in revenue. It's actually
it's a way bigger increase on your bottom line. And that's what matters at the end of the day is your profit. I'm so sick of the glorification of growth. And we're all really impressed by each other's growth, right? Well, growth is top line. And in my experience, growth is super sweaty. Growth is a lot of work. Usually it degrades quality of life. And it doesn't even mean you're making any more money. I'm trying to get away from the whole just kind of toxic attraction to just growth.
So what Jason is saying is that if you have fewer clients, you can be more personal.
Here's what I tell prospective clients is every firm is on a different end of the spectrum of who we're best suited for and how much we cost. So if people are willing to pay for that, it's absolutely worth doing. Where a lot of firms feel pressure is they hear from the bottom 5% of their clients that complain about the bill. And negativity bias makes it so that they're always trying to be more cost effective on everything for everyone, but they're not hearing from the 25% of people that will happily pay more. And David, maybe that's you. And so what they do is they try to make it as little work as possible for the accountant. And, you doing more of that work makes it less work for them. But it sounds like what you need is a more hands-on, high-touch firm, which is going to cost more. And so I don't know. At the end of the day, I don't know there's a right and a wrong way to do it. There's a lot of different flavors of it. And the higher touch may be what you want.
Well, and maybe, David, you would be happier if you had that as an option. And if it was not what you wanted to pay, then you would happily accept the type form. But you don't have that choice.
Well, here's the ironic thing, too. Just to, both firms I'm currently working with. The onboarding and me actually paying has not happened because even that is work on me. I got to go to a website, fill out a bunch of crap. Even the onboarding and the accepting the contract is more work. Can't I just give you my credit card and just get off the phone? It's funny how much work is being put on the client.
We have a long way to go with client experience.
Yeah.
I think that is the great frontier of accounting and professional services is figuring this out. We are barely scratching the surface.